This is the VOA Special English Development Report. Rift Valley fever mainly affects farm animals, but the virus can also infect humans, and South Africa has been experiencing an outbreak. The National Institute for Communicable Diseases reported 225 confirmed human cases as of July 2nd. 25 of the people died. South Africa launched an expanded program to watch for public health threats during the World Cup. Health officials said that there were no cases of Rift Valley fever in tourists. The majority of farms affected by the outbreak are outside areas generally visited by travelers. Most of the cases have been found in farm workers in two provinces, Free State and Northern Cape. Most human infections with Rift Valley fever are caused by direct or indirect contact with diseased animals. Infected mosquitoes can also pass the disease to humans. So can drinking unpasteurized or uncooked milk from infected animals. Most human cases of the disease are minor. Some patients do not get sick at all. Others may get flu-like symptoms, such as fever, muscle and joint pain, and headaches. Patients normally recover within 7 days. But patients with more severe forms can go blind. Some develop encephalitis, a brain disease that can lead to headaches, coma, or seizures. And some patients bleed to death. The World Health Organization says Rift Valley fever was first discovered in Kenya in 1931. In the year 2000, it was identified in Saudi Arabia and Yemen. These were the first reported cases of Rift Valley fever outside of Africa. Current vaccines to protect against Rift Valley fever are limited to use in animals. But researchers are working to develop the first human vaccine. In a new study, scientists in the United States tested vaccines made with two kinds of inactivated virus. They said tests in mice showed that their new vaccines are safer than live virus vaccines and appear to work just as well. Using live virus in vaccines can increase the risks. The researchers are at the University of Pittsburgh and the University of North Carolina. Their study appeared in the journal PLOS Neglected Tropical Diseases, published by the Public Library of Science. And that's the VOA Special English Development Report. You can read and listen to all of our reports at voaspecialenglish.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and iTunes at VOA Learning English. From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report. Researchers at Johns Hopkins University's Applied Physics Laboratory in Laurel, Maryland, have designed a new humanoid, or human-like robot. Its name is Robo-Sally. The machine can be controlled from a distance and can be used to do work that is dangerous for human beings. Robo-Sally has two long arms with human-like hands. She can use her fingers to pick up small objects, examine them in detail, and do most things that human hands can do. Each finger contains a tiny motor capable of squeezing 20 pounds of pinch force, enough to defuse a bomb under the direction of an operator. Robo-Sally sits on a metal base with wheels that let the robot move around, turn in tight spaces, and climb over small objects. Mike McLaughlin is the main investigator for the Applied Physics Laboratory's prosthetics program. It was a difficult job. Mr. McLaughlin says the robot hand had to have many small motors to have the ability to do what a human hand does. It also needed to have human-like strength. For search and rescue duties, Robo-Sally will be operated by a person using a wireless machine that is far from the robot. The operator will also wear special glasses. The glasses will permit the operator to see the robot's hands. Mr. McLaughlin says this kind of robot could be used in what he calls dull, dirty, or dangerous situations where fine human finger movements are required. Mr. McLaughlin says the technology is not fully ready yet. He predicts that within 5 years, there will be some very big improvements. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
This is the VOA Special English Technology Report. The satellite-based Global Positioning System is a great way to locate places or people. But in January, the United States Supreme Court ruled that law enforcement officials must get approval from a judge before placing a GPS tracking device on a vehicle. The case involved a suspected drug dealer in Washington. Police put a GPS device on his car and tracked his movements for almost a month. That led them to a house with nearly 100 kilograms of cocaine and $850,000 in cash. Antoine Jones was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. He appealed his case all the way to the Supreme Court. Law professor Christopher Slobogan at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee, says, Mr. Jones argued that that evidence was obtained illegally because the police did not have a warrant. And his argument was, in essence, that use of the tracking device was an unconstitutional search under the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution, which provides that the government may not engage in unreasonable searches and seizures. Mr. Jones claimed that the absence of a warrant made this search unreasonable. And, says Professor Slobogan, the High Court agreed. All 9 members of the court, conservative members as well as liberal members, decided that the Fourth Amendment was violated in this case. But the ruling only dealt with the physical act of placing the GPS device on the vehicle and tracking Mr. Jones. Justice Antonin Scalia wrote the majority opinion. Justice Scalia said the case did not require the court to decide if electronic monitoring without trespassing onto someone's property is also a violation of privacy. Law professor Renee Hutchins at the University of Maryland says that is a big question that remains to be answered. Most people have smartphones. A lot of people have cars that have GPS pre-installed, so the government doesn't have to do the installation. The installation, which was the hook for Justice Scalia, is already accomplished. We do it voluntarily. Justice Sonia Sotomayor suggested that the court may have to rethink what privacy means in modern society, where people voluntarily give up a lot of personal information. As Professor Hutchins put it, in a world where there's Facebook and GPS on your cell phone and GPS in your car, how should the court be thinking about constitutional protections? For VOA Special English,
this is the
I'm
VOA
Carolyn
Special
Presutti.
English Technology Report. Technology experts, government officials, policymakers, and engineers recently met in Italy. They gathered in Rome for the first Green Standards Week conference. Italy's Ministry of Economic Development and the International Telecommunications Union organized the conference. The event called attention to the need for information and communication technologies to fight climate change and to build greener, more environmentally friendly economies. In recent years, the world has changed because so many people now use computers, mobile phones, and other kinds of electronic devices. But the increasing use of information and communication technologies, also known as ICTs, also has led to more pollution, especially greenhouse gas emissions. This is mostly because of the energy used to manufacture, transport, and operate such equipment. Still, many experts say ICTs offer the best chance for reducing greenhouse gases. The Global Information Society Watch reported last year that ICTs could help to cut total production of greenhouse gases by as much as 15% by 2020. Alan Finley is with the Association for Progressive Communications. He also helped to prepare the GIS Watch report. He says the effect of using ICTs to build cleaner environments is far more powerful than their harmful effects. When you're looking at greening with ITs, you're looking at the impact of ICTs on the environment, but also what ICTs can be used in order to improve the impact of other industries on the environment. And I think the overwhelming consensus is that you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Mr. Finley says the GIS Watch report and events like the ITU's Green Standards Week are meant to look at the ICT industry as a whole. To our mind, you can't really divorce issues like e-waste, which you see the massive negative consequences in Asia, for instance, and direct impact on poor people's lives and well-being from the equation. So both need to be looked at the same time. The ITU says a main goal of the conference was to set clear policies for measuring and improving the ICT industry's effect on the environment. Another goal was to note the importance of green ICT standards and values. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. Special English Technology Report. A new study shows that sexting is not as common among young people as earlier findings suggested. Researchers at the University of New Hampshire interviewed more than 1,500 Internet users between the ages of 10 and 17. Just 2.5% of them said they had either sent or received naked pictures over their mobile phones or the Internet. Earlier surveys had suggested that as many as 20% of teens were involved in such activities. But one problem is that some of those findings included young adults, 18 and 19-year-olds. Dan Rousey is Senior Director for Technology Programs for the Boys and Girls Clubs of America. He says another problem is confusion among teenagers about what exactly sexting means. For example, he says suggestive images like someone in a bathing suit have sometimes been reported as sexting. Marion Merritt is the Internet safety advocate for the computer security company Norton. She says the New Hampshire researchers considered this confusion. They segmented the really most egregious or dangerous kinds of images people might be posting and sending from texts that might be more suggestive. Ms. Merritt says very few of the images in this latest study would have been considered illegal. The kinds of images or videos that might constitute child pornography is very low. It's only 1%. So the good news is it's a very rare phenomenon, and most young people are not engaging in these kinds of behaviors. Everyone knows young people are early adapters of technology. Dan Rousey says their experimentation often raises concern with adults, but also has another effect. We get a new technology in, and teens, they push that envelope, and in some ways, as a society, help us see all of the possibilities with new technologies as well. The journal Pediatrics published the new study in December. In a second study, the New Hampshire researchers found that very few sexting cases investigated by police led to arrests. Marion Merritt is glad about that. Over the last several years, we've seen law enforcement across the country start to take a more modulated approach and not going for full enforcement of, a mistake, a momentary lapse in judgment from young people who don't understand the power of the images they may be sharing. For VOA Special English,
this is
I'm
the
Alex
VOA
Villarreal.
Special English Technology Report. June 8th was World IPv6 Day, the first major deployment of Internet Protocol version 6. Hundreds of Internet service providers and web companies tested IPv6 on their websites. This new numbering system for Internet addresses has been available for years, but very few companies have switched to it. Yet the old system could run out of addresses this year because of all the growth in online devices. Computer science professor Doug Sajda at the University of Richmond in Virginia explains. It's sort of like the post office of the Internet. It tells you how to get information from one computer to another. Currently, and since around 1980, the addressing system has been IP version 4. But the problem with that is that we've run out of addresses. So it's almost as if when a new house is built, you can't give it an address because you don't have any more. IPv4 was designed to handle just over 4 billion IP addresses. Doug Sajda says that seemed like more than enough. At the time that IP version 4 was designed, the designers were anticipating perhaps thousands of users of the internet someday, and certainly thinking that 4 billion addresses was many more than we would ever need. Yet now, not just computers, but smartphones, cars, televisions, game systems, and plenty of other devices all connect to the internet. Each uses a different IP address. The basic standards for IPv6 were first published in 1998. Doug Sajda says its most important feature is the ability to provide what seems like an unlimited number of IP addresses. Well, there is a limit. 340 trillion, in fact, or 340 undecillion. That's 340 followed by 36 zeros. Experts say the challenge now is to get the world to use it. Mr. Sajda says that was the real purpose of the World IPv6 Day sponsored by the Internet Society. It was less a worldwide test than a means of generating some incentive for vendors to realize we can't drag our feet anymore. This has to happen. The process of switching to IPv6 can be complex and costly. This could explain why so few companies have made the switch. CompTIA, the Computing Technology Industry Association, recently did a survey. The group talked to more than 400 information technology and business leaders in the United States. Only 21% said they have started doing work to upgrade their networks. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal.